If you're an accountant or you are looking to become an accountant, one of the first questions you should be asking is what is the state of the profession currently and where is it going? Where is it trending? So, in this video, I'm going to answer that question and sort of look at what the future has in store for us as accountants. So, if you're new to the channel, my name is Callum. I'm a chartered accountant here in the UK, and I talk about all things accounting and tips to help accountants start excelling in their career and in their life. So, in this video, I'm going to dive into four key areas, which are private equity, artificial intelligence, offshoring, and the talent shortages. So, this is going to be fairly UK specific. However, I do know that these problems or these things are popping up in other countries. So, no matter where you're watching, you are probably going to benefit from knowing this information. So, I want to try and keep this as quick as I can without being too dry or getting into too much detail. First up, we've got private equity. Now, if we go back to this GIF, it kind of feels like PE investors are throwing money at accountancy firms left, right, and center at the moment. But there's a good reason for that. Firstly, accountancy firms are pretty much recession proof and recurring revenue businesses, right? If you look at a accounting firm's client base, it's very much compliance oriented. It's people who have been with the firm for a long, long time, and they are paying retainer fees every month or every year for a set service, and they know what they're getting. Regardless of the state of the world, you're always going to have to file accounts. You're always going to have to file your tax returns. So, very safe bet in terms of business to invest in from a PE perspective. And this kind of follows on to the point of stable and predictable income with strong client retention compared to a tech business which can vary in customers. It's seasonal and demand possibly. Accounting is very, very predictable, and what's predictable is scalable, and what's scalable is attractive to PE. There's also plenty of potential to make efficiency improvements. So at the moment, it feels like new software and new technology is popping up every other week, trying to help accountants to become more efficient and technologically savvy. So all these options to increase efficiency are there. It just needs a bit of a boost from PE to inject that money to start investing in these. So these large PE backed firms are expanding aggressively, and smaller firms are being brought up and merged into these larger networks, effectively allowing for economies of scale, an increased service offering, and access to talent, which we'll get onto soon. But how do I think PE is actually going to change things for accounting? Well, the sole focus of PE is to develop a return on investment for the shareholders. And really, the two ways of doing that are to cut costs and increase margins or increase revenues. So I can really see a heavy investment in technology and innovation to start driving that efficiency, looking at things like artificial intelligence, offshoring, which we'll get onto, but all these different ways of increasing efficiency to pretty much make the firm more profitable and allow the shareholders to generate a greater return when PE goes on to eventually sell that business, or if it merges into another business and the business ultimately wants to make a greater profit. Also, there's a lot of talk going around at the moment about the partner role and how this is quote unquote dying. Well, I think the reason for that is because PE is shaking things up in terms of how they do things from a structural perspective. So typically an accounting firm will have partners who own chunks of the business, and there isn't really too many roles like COO or head of data or anything like that, which you kind of hear in the startup world. But I really think PE is going to start making these roles more prevalent in firms. So things like head of data, head of AI, head of sales, that kind of stuff is really going to become a priority as PE money comes into the firms and really shakes up how things are going to start happening. Whether that's giving partners a succession plan out of the firm, or whether that's providing them with these new skills, or selling them out, or buying them out, or whatever. I really think the whole government structure and sort of top layer of a firm is going to change. So next up, I want to talk about artificial intelligence. Now, Undoubtedly, this does crop up quite a lot. I do see a lot of videos on AI and how AI is going to replace accountants, but really, I don't think it will. I think what's going to happen is it's going to replace those that fail to adopt AI. And there's going to be a key shift away from compliance work to more advisory work. So if you look at what AI can do currently, it's really starting to take over those routine tasks. So things like data entry with bookkeeping, bank reconciliations, processing, even basic tax returns, AI is starting to be able to accommodate these and actually replace them from a human. So with this, I think accountants need to start thinking about how can data actually produce meaningful insights for clients, and how can I actually communicate these in a easily understandable way to clients, because ultimately a client doesn't just want a load of data. They want to know what that data means for them and what they can and what they should do about it. I also think it's going to be key to ask what sort of tasks are eating up time but aren't directly adding value to clients. So some of these tasks like data entry may not be value added tasks, but they need to get done. So if you can incorporate a system of AI to effectively automate them and replace them and give you more free time to go ahead and charge that out to clients at a high rate, then ultimately from a commercial perspective, it's going to be a lot better for the firm. And I also think it's important to ask, how can you implement a system to automate what I'm about to do so I can focus elsewhere? So, again, this really ties into step two, or question two, I should say. But having a system when it comes to AI for data entry, for bank rec, for invoice processing, I'm really developing a workflow in this area to effectively go ahead and automate these areas so you can focus on the tasks that really bring profit and really bring value to clients. So the big takeaway from this is the focus and the shift on advisory and building systems to automate the compliance focused tasks. So next up, we've got offshoring. So a lot of firms have started outsourcing routine work to lower cost countries. And the reason is largely due to one, the talent shortage that's going on in accounting at the moment, which we'll get onto. The fact that you can charge it is cheaper effectively, and you can pay a lower wage to these workers to do essentially the same work as you would pay to a full-time employee. And you can also scale without a lot of the hassle of having to recruit. So recruiting is increasingly becoming more expensive with changes in rates and fees and stuff like that. So being able to outsource can be a very cost efficient and cost effective way for firms to start scaling as they do take on more work. Typically, the work being outsourced is more compliance led rather than client facing. So, obviously, it's quite difficult to outsource your relationships and your relationship management with clients, especially those clients that have been around for a long time. But a lot of the compliant led work, which we touched on in the last point, can be outsourced and is being outsourced. So it's things like bookkeeping, some of the basic audit tests, payroll processing, and accounts prep, all things that are really starting to be outsourced and offshored. So looking forward, I really think offshoring is going to come a key part of a lot of firm strategy. So typically low cost labor came from the new hires, the new grads and apprentices. And now I really think there might be a bit of a shift towards firms going more remote, particularly with the increase in working from home and this sort of virtual online office that we kind of have with Zoom and Teams and all that kind of stuff. But really, it's not much harder to start offshoring to uh, cheaper wages and cheaper labor abroad, really, as opposed to hiring these new grads and hiring these new apprentices. So, again, I think there's going to be quite a big shift there. I do think firms are going to start adopting a hybrid model. So outsourcing a lot of the compliance work and a lot of the sort of manual data entry style work, and really focusing on the advisory work and the relationship management side of things. So again, it's quite evident that firms can charge a lot more for this value added work, and paying more attention to this and giving more time to the relationship side of things is going to become more important, especially as if we get onto this third point where clients can start bypassing the accounting firms as a whole and possibly start working directly with these offshoring firms, even looking at things like Upwork and Fiverr and these freelancing sites, you can see bookkeeping jobs, accounts prep jobs, all these people from different countries offering services at generally a lower rate to what you'd pay in the UK or the US. So possibly there's a potential for clients to effectively bypass the firms in these countries and go straight to the source, which again is worrying and is a possibility. But I do think it's unlikely for a lot of firms, in my personal opinion, just given the relationship side of things when it comes to accounting, and also the changing role of accountant from more of a compiler to a business advisor, so someone that can actually give strategic insight and effectively help people with the whole business in general rather than just data processing and compiling. So next up, and the final point, we've got the talent shortage. So it's pretty evident in the UK and abroad in America that fewer students are interested in accounting as a career path. Obviously, it's what I went down after doing an economics degree, but in general, there's been a heavy decline in people who are going down this route and showing an interest in this path. So, all the main accountancy bodies in the UK have reported lower student numbers, and really, fewer students in the pipeline mean fewer accountants. So, why do I think this is? Well, first up, there's an opportunity cost. You're sitting exams for a few years at generally a lower rate of pay than you would get in other areas. And you're effectively forgoing one, the added time which you can get enjoying your life, having not to sit exams, and two, the possible higher wages that you could get elsewhere. So, really, it's about weighing up that opportunity cost for students. There's, as I said, the increase in interest in other areas. So alternative career paths like fractional work, freelancing and entrepreneurship is becoming more popular and more prevalent as the world shifts to more online focused. I just mentioned it with Upwork and Fiverr. It's quite easy to actually start getting jobs nowadays if you do want to online. And really, with this growing shift to working online, people want to enjoy more of their life and travel a bit more. So I do think there might be a shift there. And there's also the long hours and the poor work life balance, particularly at a lot of the bigger firms. I didn't really have this problem, but there is a churn and burn hustle culture of the grunt work in your first few years of particularly audit. A lot of the larger firms, at least here in the UK and the US, and a lot of people just don't want to go through that anymore. And the last point is newly qualified accountants tend to hop to industry, generally for better pay and better work life balance. So, again, these are just some of the reasons why I think there are fewer students entering the accounting profession in general. And what does the future hold? Just make myself smaller here. But we have supply and demand dictating higher salaries where demand outstrips supply. So if you just look at it from a purely demand and supply perspective, you have these firms who have increasing workloads through, there's still clients who need work done. There's more advisory work, and generally there's less accountants to do that work. So generally what tends to happen is if the demand outstrips the supply, then wages increase, or firms look to alternative methods like outsourcing and offshoring. But PE money that's coming into firms may help with this. If PE money is enabling firms to offer higher salaries and allow them to compete more with not just other firms, but also other industries and other professions, this may in fact help the profession as a whole to increase the number of students and the interest from a purely monetary perspective. Then, if we look at the second point about offshoring, plugging the gap in entry level work, we sort of discussed that above. But where firms aren't able to hire cheaper labor through graduates or apprentices, you might see firms start to offshore that work as it becomes easier to connect with people in different countries. And finally, new accountants want interesting and value added work. So there's really this shifting dynamic and shifting expectations of new individuals getting involved in accounting and the profession as a whole. So really, I think this is what the future holds and why I think there is an accounting shortage. Don't particularly know what's going to happen, but it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. So that was just a short fire, four different things in accounting and the profession that I think are going to start happening. If you found that interesting, would really appreciate a subscribe, and also drop a comment below if you agree with me or if you disagree with me, or if you have any thoughts in general about the profession. Genuinely, I'm very interested to hear. So with that, I'll see you on the next video.